This one, I think you're actually comfortable explaining.
Yeah.
Correct me
Here's
if I'm
the deal, my dude. I am currently editing something that has already been filmed and compiled, which is a basic to advanced strategy guide for Wingspan. This is a game that I have, I think, over 150 plays under my belt. So I do feel pretty comfortable with good old Wingspan. You said this is a Stonemeyer game, and you are correct, but this is not a Stegmeyer game. Important clarification. Done by Elizabeth Hargrave or Hargrove? Hargrave, right?
I think it's Hargrave, yes, as in dead.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if she'd appreciate that. Maybe she does appreciate that. Maybe she has a dark humor, a sense of dark humor.
Dark sense of humor, but go on.
A dark sense of humor. That's the real phrasing there. Anyway, let's jump into this. Wingspan is an action selection, or perhaps more appropriately, action efficiency game in which there are only ever 4 actions you will select. One of them is a bit more off by itself, which is play a bird, and this is just how you're going to be developing all the rest of your actions. But then your other 3 actions are going to let you acquire food to play birds, acquire eggs to satisfy the cost of playing birds, or draw birds to play. And while that sounds simple, this is an extremely competitive game. There is an online tournament like scheme for Wingspan, just in the same way as that there is for
you mean like
Scythe.
a tournament way to play the game?
No, like there are communities that like arrange tournaments that will be like matchups where I don't know if they have like a double elimination thing, or if you just, once you win a game, you move up to the next bracket and then you keep going and then there's a winner eventually for all of it. I haven't actually participated in one, but just from doing studying of the Wingspan universe over the years and like, mastering techniques and such, if I in fact have mastered anything about it, it becomes evident that there is a whole tournament scheme involved here, which is pretty cool. It's fun to see that many people so dedicated to a game that have kind of worked it down to a science where they're willing to spend that much time and energy to just keep going at it. That was a big ramble that was on the side of Wingspan. But back to how Wingspan works. Yep, yeah. You play your birds. The birds have different groupings of abilities. You're going to have brown powers that once you play them, they now enhance the action, one of your 3 other actions they're going to be using. So maybe you put a bird with a brown power down in the food row. So now every time you gather food, you get to activate that bird and you get something. Then you've got the pink powers. These are more passive abilities that will activate up to 1 time per turn. Editing Cody here. Podcast Cody misspoke. Pink powers activate once per round, not once per turn. I know how to play Wingspan. When someone else does something, so that's a fun little twist. Then you've got your white power birds, which are just one-off abilities, sort of your instant effects that are a little bit more powerful, that will do something. In some birds, they're just worth points, and they give you some stats, but they have no abilities to them. And this is again, it's especially action efficiency because it's not like Scythe or Terraforming Mars where you go until a certain end condition is met. There's actually a specific number of turns that you play. So you play through 4 rounds and there's a decreasing number of turns each player takes in those rounds. And then afterwards, whoever has the most points based off of the bird faces and some other additional scoring criteria, like there's end of round goals you're competing for, as well as some personal bonus cards that you're trying to qualify for to get as many points as possible. You add those up and get this, the person who has the most points, they win.
So you talked about the, you get less and less actions every round. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that a little bit. How do you feel about that? This, you start with whatever it is, 6 or maybe 7, is it?
8, but same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, over the course of whatever, 4 rounds, you're doing 1 less action every round. What are your thoughts on that as far as it is concerned within this game?
I don't mind it at all. I know that's a little bit unique in the realm of turns per era.
Yes,
I guess.
in that realm, turns per era.
Yeah, whatever you call that. Usually those are set. You'll always have the same number of turns. Lots of games are divided into you play 3 or 4 rounds or 3 or 4 eras, and then you always have the same number of turns divided in those. So Wingspan, I think that just kind of adds to its own uniqueness. It's almost the Wingspan signature. If you have 8 turns, then 7, then 6, then 5. But Yeah, I really like that because your beginning turns, sure, you can take 8 turns in the first round, but they're not remotely as powerful as the turns you're taking, especially in the final round.
Yeah.
And so it's really fun to try to do as best you can in the early stages, get your engine set up, and then really try to milk it for as much as possible by the end of the game.
Well, I feel like if I'm introduced to a game and I hear that you're getting less and less actions every round, I feel like my first thought would be like, well, hold up. I don't want to do less as the game goes on. I want to do more, right? Like that's part of the fun of engine building games and just board games in general is kind of building and building and working on something and kind of like increasing how, the cool stuff that you can do and your, the different things that are going on in the game, just increasing and building up on that. But that still happens in this game because like you said, your 8 actions in the first round are all very, very weak. But because you're building up your rows of birds and you're triggering actions, even if you're only doing 4 in the last round or whatever, there's a lot of, it's very powerful, like you're doing one action and it has this trigger effect that, other things can happen. And so, they're much more powerful turns. And so it kind of balances out at least, in that sense. So it's a good design, I think, actually.
Yeah, and just by the fact that you have less turns later in the game, it just kind of raises the stakes. It doesn't make it feel like you're losing opportunities. It's just, it focuses you more.
It's not like Agricola feeding your workers tents, but it is like, okay, I can't do as wide of a variety of things as I could at the beginning of the game, And so you have to be more... you have to be a little bit more efficient with what you do towards the end of the game and be a little more careful with how you pick what you pick, for sure. Huh? What is that noise, Cody?
I don't know. It's like "ite," but without the
yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll talk about some more good stuff I like, and then I'll let you jump on it. I'm sure you have more to say. I think one thing I really like about this, and this is Stonemaier games in general, maybe not all their games, but a lot of their games are quick, snappy turns, quick, snappy gameplay, quick turn, quick turn, quick turn, quick turn, and you just keep bouncing around the table, It might slow down a little bit, as the game goes on, like we were just talking about, your actions get longer, they trigger more things, they might even affect other people. But in general, it's a bunch of short little turns, and I think that makes for really good gameplay. There's not big lumps of downtime, there's not, like the game doesn't break down and grind to a halt and just kind of trudge on, it's like boom, boom, boom. I like that a lot. Also, of course, the game looks good. I don't know if I should say of course. Not everybody's going to agree with that. It's very minimalist. The art looks very good though. I think every single card is unique and they all have their own artistic rendition of the bird. Look great. The aesthetic of the cards in the game, well, at least of the cards in general, is very consistent. It looks very good. The game is fine. I like the little pastel eggs that you're putting out and all this stuff.
Yeah.
In general, I think it looks pretty good. It's not a shocker. But there's also that birdhouse thing too that you build, the dice tower. That? It's really stupid, but
whoa.
Well, it is.
Whoa there.
Like it's completely unnecessary. I'm not a fan of dice roller things in general. Like I would never use one, I don't think. But like I think it's pretty gimmicky, but at the same time it looks cute, so like it's a pro and con thing.
Yeah. I will say it's hard to roll dice in that dice tower.
It's really hard.
You have to sort of shove them in from the side as opposed to just dropping them straight down.
Most of the time one doesn't make it and it bounces on the floor.
Yeah, I played the digital version for so long that I kind of forgot about that part.
Yeah, it's like you're putting them in one at a time, or you try and shove them all in, and then one doesn't make it because the hole's too small. Yeah, whatever. And also, I appreciate again the huge deck of cards with entirely all unique cards. I love that. I think it's a balancing nightmare, I would expect from a designing perspective, but it seems like it's done really well. And I appreciate that from a gameplay perspective. So, I think it's well done. I think it's really well done.
Yeah, it is, I think, pretty well balanced. There obviously are some OP'd birds and some, I guess, underpowered UP birds. UP'd birds?
UP'd birds.
Let's not say that again.
Well, I think what's important is that there aren't very many cards that are dependent on other cards, you know? It's like, well, this card, I can't play it, or it's really terrible unless I play it with another card, you know? That's something that Dune Imperium not struggles with, but it's something I notice sometimes in Dune Imperium. It's like, oh, I can play this card if it has Fremen Bond, but I haven't bought any Fremen cards. And, you know, so it's like, I feel like in a lot of other cards with huge decks, sometimes you miss out on these connections and these opportunities because the deck is simply just too big, you know? But this game, there's not too many interdependencies, which means in a way you don't have these kind of funky, cool abilities of cards playing off each other. But at the same time, it's not a strike against the game, you know, where it's like, well, this card's basically useless because the odds of me getting something it works well with are, you know, slim to none. So I think that's in a way, it's a good choice to not have too much of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I entirely agree with that. I think maybe it's technically correct that a given card does not require another card to perform well. But in my experience, the game is 100% all about synergies. So you have to get birds that play well off of each other. And granted, there's multiple options and multiple combos. So one bird may play well off of a variety of other birds, but you still need those synergies if you really want to do well at the game.
Okay, but so I guess then because the barrier to entry for these synergies is kind of low, or it's kind of vague in a way, right? There's a lot of different birds that can potentially work well with the birds you have.
Yeah.
Then it's not as direct, like play this with this specific other type of card with this keyword and you'll get this other bonus, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Although there are some combos that are well known in the Wingspan community that are like the legendary combos that if you get those in your starting hand, you can just sit back and relax because it's going to be a nice game.
Has that ever happened to you in your 150 games?
I'm sure it has. I've gotten those birds individually in my starting hand. Probably a couple of times I've gotten both of them, but it's, pretty rare.
All right. Well, feel free to piggyback on anything I said and, you know, extrapolate on anything I said for likes.
All right. Wait, how about I just say what I want to say? Is that too much for you?
Well,
is that a problem?
I use the expression feel free. So I feel like I'm implying you can do whatever you want, even though I gave you a suggestion.
All right. Well, I'm going to ignore that, and I'm just going
to do so, Cody.
I'm just going to try. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. I do feel free. I'm in America, free country. For now.
That was
ominous foreboding.
Impending doom. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, what I like about the game, this is always a puzzle. Again, I have played more than my fair share of Wingspan games, but I am still always happy to approach it like every time. I think maybe I go through little seasons of I play it like 40 games in a month for maybe a couple of months, and then maybe I set it aside for a little bit, then I come back. Yeah. I mean, it's so easy to do if you have the digital version. You just keep playing against bots and you just keep loading it up. But every game is a puzzle. You didn't really mention this when talking about it, but every single card in the game is unique. There are no duplicates. Yeah. There are some similar birds, like very, very similar, but it's not like a deck builder where there's like multiple copies, like 3 or 4 copies of the same card. Mm-hmm. You can get a bunch of them. And so because of that, you're always going to have a unique starting hand. You always have to make a decision on what cards you're going to start with and which cards you discard in order to take food. And then you want to figure out how you can progress. What are the new available birds and how can you pull those out of the draft, or not the draft, the
market.
Well, I was going to say the meadow, but that's Everdell. Yeah, the market, whatever they call it for Wingspan. It's kind of sad that I don't remember. I guess the tray. I never play with the tray when I play the physical game. I'll get to that as a dislike. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I lost my train of thought. Getting cards is fun, and you can make cool things, and it's always a puzzle. Boom.
I guess I agree.
How was that? Good?
I like the cards that trigger other, like, not that trigger other cards, but like the cards that are all in the same row that you get to trigger multiple abilities. Is a very cool trickle down effect.
Yes. Yeah, it's very cool. Especially if you get a strong engine built and you can just go boom, boom, boom. And especially if some of the cards actually play off of each other. Like maybe one bird requires an egg to be spent to do something, but the card right in front of it lets you tuck a card to gain an egg. You can get a nice little chain reaction there.
Yeah.
And that is one of the keys to doing well. I also, there are multiple expansions out for the game. 3 now, I think. I don't have the latest one, the Asian expansion, but I do have, it's like Oceania and the European. And here's the deal. I'm fine with the base game. Like the majority, probably 90+% of all the games I've played of Wingspan have been without the expansions. And that's not like I just got the expansions last week. I've had both expansions for most of the time that I've owned Wingspan. And they add novelty for sure. They add some unique scenarios, but for some reason I just enjoy just playing with the base game. I'm excited to try out the Asian one though. I'll have to get that soon.
You're sure you're not going to be like, it's not going to be a similar experience where you're just like, take it or leave it?
Well, since it's one of my favorite games, I just feel obliged that I need to add it to my collection just to have it, you know?
All right.
Yeah. The art is pretty good. It's all sort of minimal. Like all the cards are just white backgrounds with just the birds on them.
Well, but it's like a nice cream. It's not like a stark white, you know?
Yeah. It's very calm, very mellow. And I think there are multiple artists who did all these, but they're all hand-drawn illustrations of all the birds, and they look really good. Like they're nice. Absolutely. And as always, it's a Stonemaier game, so it got some nice material quality. All the cards have a nice little texture to them. The boards are pretty cool, especially when you flip over the boards. I don't know if you remember this, but the backside, the unusable side of your player board, it looks like a journal or some sort of like leather-bound book. It's pretty cool.
Like
it adds to the atmosphere.
Because you're like, it's like hand-drawn birds on the card, so it's like you're adding sketches to your sketchbook.
Oh, I didn't think of it that way. Look at that, man. You're helping me enjoy and appreciate Wingspan even more.
You're welcome, Cody.
But yeah, those are my major likes. What are your dislikes for this game?
Honestly, there's really only one. Well, actually, there's 2 now because you reminded me of the dice tower thing, which, I'm not a fan of that. The only other, I guess that reminds me of another thing, actually. The dice in general can be a bit annoying. There's some strategy to them, but basically you're kind of randomly generating resources whenever it gets depleted, you know? I'm not a huge fan. I feel like that's the one thing in the game that annoys me a lot. And it's it's not the only random part because you have a stack of cards, but in general, it kind of feels like the only really super random thing. And it's the thing that bugs me the most while playing the game. But I think in general, my only really strong dislike is just my general experience with the game. I feel like it's never really exciting. Maybe I'm just bad at it, and that's my problem. Like, I never get super fun combos or anything. Haven't played it enough to know which birds to play, which ones to discard, what order to play them. But in general, like, just reflecting on Wingspan and my general experience with it, there's nothing really memorable. There's nothing that really, elicits excitement or like, oh yeah, I remember like it was so much fun, whatever. It's kind of like, yeah, it's a good game. It looks nice, fun to play. Take it or leave it, kind of, So I guess my dislike is that the game in general just doesn't really vibe with me, I guess. That's a very vague and, subjective opinion. But, hey, take it or leave it, in my opinion.
Yeah. If opinions could be wrong, then you would be wrong. But since opinions are subjective, I'll let it slide.
And I believe, Cody, that I might feel the same way about your opinion, but...
Which is another opinion that could be wrong.
So I'm interested to hear if you have any negatives.
I do.
The card tray you already mentioned.
Yeah. So the card tray, that was the first one. The other one is tucking cards. This is a thing you do. Some birds require you to literally tuck a card from your hand underneath them, and then that counts as a point at the end of the game. But once you get an engine of these abilities going, and especially if those cards are like in the middle of your board after you've filled up birds all around them, it can be kind of a pain to try to like slowly peel up one bird and try to slide another card underneath it without like knocking all of your other birds around.
Yeah, if it's in like the middle of the middle row.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. Again, the majority of the games of this I've played are the digital version, so you don't got to worry about that.
But also another downside would be that people can't glance at your board and kind of tell. It's like every card you have tucked is a point, but if I glance at your board, it's like maybe there's 5, in the different stacks, or maybe there's 30,
I mean, if you had 30 cards, it'd be pretty...
Well, I don't mean in one stack, but I mean like if you have
see.
multiple cards that you're tucking cards underneath, you know, just to
sure.
glance at your board. Maybe 30 is an exaggeration, but like 5 or 15, you know, spread out between like 4 birds. Could be hard to, but that's very, very minor.
Yeah, well, it's a game where it doesn't really matter how many points the other person has. I suppose...
Other than winning,
I suppose there are some... Well, yeah, but I mean, you're not going to sit there and like, oh man, I really wish I knew how many cards he had tucked. Like, it wouldn't really affect
doesn't affect your
decisions.
decisions. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But still, I want to know.
You'll find out at the end of the game, bro. We'll add them up. But yeah, that's what I got. That's Wingspan.
Wait,
any final thoughts to throw at Wingspan?
Did you mention that card tray at all?
Yeah, dude.
What'd you say?
Well, I said it earlier, and then I said it twice earlier. What do you want from me? I don't like the card tray.
You alluded to it, but I don't know what your actual beef is with it.
Maybe I didn't get into it. It ruins the appearance of Wingspan. Wingspan is a nice, natural-looking game, but instead you've got these, like, they just look like rinky-dink, like, pastel neon plastic things that just look ugly.
That's weird,
like,
isn't it?
Sure. It is super weird. It's, I guess, kind of cool that you can hold the cards in them, like they are a game insert of sorts. The thing is, I don't use them anymore. Like, I just put all the cards in bags because that's an easier way for me to approach it. But the tray is also meant to be a display for the cards that are available for drafting, but it doesn't really hold them all the way either. Like, it's more of a pain to try to reveal a new card and like shove it into the slot. Like, I'd rather just toss the tray, and I think honestly I actually have tossed the trays.
Good for you, Kyle.
One of the expansions comes with another tray that's a different color, and I'm like, no, I didn't pay for this.
That's great.
So yeah, that's my biff.
Well, even if my review was not necessarily a ringing endorsement, I know how you feel, and I think I would agree that this is actually a game I would recommend to people. Like, I don't own it, and I'm not necessarily planning on owning it, but I do think it's a very solid game, and I think it's a good one to own too, honestly. So I think it's a solid recommend from me and a very strong recommend from you.
Yeah. Look at that nice combo Tabletop Shop endorsement.
Look at that.
We should start getting our own stickers that we can slap on games.
Yeah. People will be
we'll slap them on our own games.
That'll just be like advertising. It'll be like, people are like, what is this? I've never heard of this. Let's go look it up.
Yeah.